Good afternoon. The day is Thursday, February 6, 2025. The time is 1:30 p.m. It's another beautiful day here in Paradise, and I'm happy to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll ask our board secretary to please call the roll.
Emmeline Savage. Dana Picott. Here. Jonathan Burgess.
Here.
Christopher Hagan.
Here.
Alfred Fields.
Here.
Sherry Hack. Let the record reflect that Christopher Kammerer is not present today.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a quorum for this meeting, so we may proceed. I'll ask everyone here to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. You may be seated. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the November 7th, 2024 meeting. I'll ask the board here if anyone has any additions or corrections to the minutes, and if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Board Member Burgess. Sorry, the motion was made by Board Member Burgess and seconded by Board Member Fields. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. At this point, we'll move to a report, if any, from our Planning Division staff. Ms. Jones-Van.
Good evening, Board. Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Just like to welcome our new member, Sherry Hack, and welcome to the ZBA. And other than that, staff has no other agenda items. No other comments.
Thank you. Now moving to remarks from the chairperson. I'll also like to extend a welcome to Ms. Hack. Welcome to the board as an alternate. And as we proceed today, I'll go over the process for any case that comes before this board. Matters before the ZBA are quasi-judicial in nature. Anyone wishing to speak, including members of the public who wish to offer public comment, will need to be sworn in. The applicant will make a presentation and answer any questions from the board. The applicant will then be followed by city staff who will provide a presentation and recommendation to the board, and then we'll answer any questions. Members of the public will then be given an opportunity to provide comment, with each person receiving 3 minutes. City staff will also insert any public comment received in advance of today's meeting, such as emails, voicemails, etc., into the record. The applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal, and then the floor will be closed. The board will go into executive session for a discussion, motion, and vote. And as a reminder, under this board's rules, 4 affirmative votes are required for approval. So with that, that's the extent of my remarks, and we'll move into ex parte communication. I'd like to start on the left with Ms. Savage.
Sorry, I'm looking for the
It should be a laminated card.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. As to the matter of 3445, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received any written communications. I have not conducted any investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received any expert opinions on the matter. I request that these disclosures.
Thank you. Board Member Picott.
As to matter case number 3445, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Board Member Burgess.
As to matter 3445, I have met with the applicant's representative on Friday, January 31st for a preview of the application. As to that same agenda item, I have not received other written communications other than setting up the meeting. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. Board Member Field. Thank you. And Board Alternate Hack.
Okay, as to matter case 3445, I have not had any ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Thank you. And for my disclosures, as to matter case number 3445, I have had ex parte communications, virtual meeting with Mr. Oyer and Mr. Chegas on behalf of the applicant for this item. I have not received other written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record. So with that, we'll move into the public hearing and starting off with the swearing in of speakers. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on the case that is before us today, please rise and raise your right hand, and we'll have the board secretary swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no continued cases, so we'll move to the one case that's on our agenda. I'll have our secretary please read that case into the record.
Zoning Board of Appeals, case number 3445, a request by Brian Chagas on behalf of BRP Nottingham Boulevard LLC for variances from section 94-309G of the city's zoning and land development regulations for the construction of townhomes located within a multifamily medium-density MF20 residential district. The subject properties, consisting of approximately 1.59 acres, are located at 418, 424, 430, 432, 442, and 444 Nottingham Boulevard within Commission District Number 5, Commissioner Christina Lambert.
Thank you. We'll start off with asking the applicant to please come forward and make a presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. For the record, Harvey Oyer of Schutz & Bowen on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I will walk you through this very quickly. I'm accompanied by the property ownership, Tommy Frankel, and the site planner and landscape architect, Brian Chegas of iPlan and Design. We are before you this afternoon seeking approval of 5 variances, all of which are occasioned by a new urbanist design of a project so that all of the units are rear loaded and every unit faces either a public park or a public street. And because our subdivision portion of our zoning and land development regulations never really contemplated a new urbanist type of design, it triggers 5 different variances. And incidentally, because these are fee ownership, it is 30 different townhouse units, these are triggered. Had this been one apartment project, none of these would be triggered because you wouldn't have the same setback issues. So let me first orient you. If you go down South Dixie Highway to Nottingham, outlined in the yellow rectangle is the site. It is properties, an accumulation of properties that are 155 feet deep, which is deeper than a typical platted lot, not only in this neighborhood, but most neighborhoods. Most neighborhoods in West Palm Beach are platted about 100 feet deep, maybe some of them 120. So this is an anomaly even within its neighborhood and zoning district. For example, across the street, this is the same zoning district, multifamily 20, MF 20. This is MF 20, and you'll notice that these, and I have these dimensioned in later images, are 100 feet deep. So we're dealing with a unique lot to begin with, in addition to a unique concept of a new urbanist townhouse community within a traditional subdivision area. To the south of us is Phipps Park. You're all familiar with Phipps Park. The City South Fire Station is here. All of this is commercial on both sides of Dixie. You have the FEC Railroad to the west with industrial uses. So there are no true single-family uses in the area. Almost all of these, and I'll show you some imagery of the current condition. Almost all of these are duplexes, triplexes, rentals, industrial, warehouses, public park, fire station, commercial. So it's an ideal location for this sort of concept. There are no current zoning entitlements on this. It's the amalgamation of a number of lots, some of which are vacant, some of which are apartment buildings, some of which are old single-family homes. None of them have historical significance. None of them are historically designated. This is a project overview so you have a better feel for the variances you'll be voting on. It's a new urbanist concept, and I'll illustrate that and better explain it. It is bisected through the middle as proposed with a private road that allows both units on both sides to be rear loaded, so the garage is in the back. We have other examples in the city that have done something identical. As I stated, it triggers 5 variances because of the way it's designed. They're all fee simple ownership, so there's 30 proposed townhouses, less than what the zoning code allows. Zoning code would actually allow 32 or 33 units, so we're under the density. We did not seek a zoning change, comp plan amendment. All of this is allowed by code, but for these dimensional setback variances. And again, the last bullet point, I think, best explains our subdivision regulations in our code, as probably all of you know, were written with a traditional subdivision in mind. It didn't contemplate an internal road with townhouses facing out from both sides. So it causes a flip in what your front setback is and what your rear setback is. So maybe this will better illustrate it. So on the left side of your screen, it shows the zoning in our neighborhood. I've highlighted in a yellow rectangle our site. Under the yellow rectangle, it is brown, and brown means MF20, and we are surrounded by MF20. The pink is neighborhood commercial, the dark red is general commercial, and we also have some industrial over here. The light green is Phipps Park, so that's a public recreational area. And the concept, ladies and gentlemen, was to create townhouses that face Nottingham, but not with driveways and garages and garbage and recycling, but like you would see in Abacoa, where it's just front yard, front porch, and then do the same thing on the other side facing the park. So you can have a row of 3-story townhouses facing the street or overlooking the park, and the roadway, your garbage, your recycling, your generators, your AC units, everything buried in the interior of the property. So it's a great design that is espoused by every school of new urbanism, but our code never contemplated this. So thus we arrive before you today. This is the current condition of the neighborhood, not our site. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is this is an MF20 district, which means multifamily, not single family, and that's exactly what's there. That's what the code envisioned was multifamily. That's what's there today, and we are multifamily too. So the use is right in line with what the code contemplates. I wanted to give you a dimensioned explanation of why we have this unique lot size. Everywhere else, like probably the neighborhoods that many of us live in, have typically about 100-foot deep lot, maybe 120 if you're lucky. These are 155, so they're oversized. They're unique, not sure why historically that happened, but it gives us an opportunity here to do a project that you really couldn't do in 100-foot depth. And so this is the project. Let me orient you. The top part of your screen is Nottingham. The bottom part of your screen is that Phipps Park area. The west side, these would be the industrial uses and the railroad. And if you've ever, gone to Phipps Park, the back way, there's a back road that runs along the railroad track. Over here is Dixie Highway, and you have the fire station over here, and I frankly forget what's on the hard corner. But we're buried within that commercial industrial area. And the concept was to have lots 1 through 14, which are 14 different individual fee simple ownership 3-story townhouses with their front steps facing Nottingham. And the garage in the rear, and the garbage in the rear, and the AC units hidden in the interior, and this is a one-way road through the project. And similarly, the units on the south side, which are lots 15 through 30, are also loaded from the rear, but under the code, your front setback is always from the road. So these units have a traditional front setback. This is our front door facing the park, but because the road frontage is here, what we consider the rear of our units is actually the front setback under the code. So I'm going to better illustrate this for you, but I think that depicts what the code discrepancy is. This is the one-way private road through the property, and it is oversized beyond what you need for a fire truck, so there's no dimensional problem with the road. And again, you would park in the back, and your front door would look out towards the park in the case of the southern units, and out towards Nottingham with quite a large setback from the property line being that yellow broken line. And this is just to illustrate that all of the ugly stuff that ideally the neighbors across the street don't want to see, your recycling bins, your garbage, your garage door going up and down, your garage open with all of the junk that I have in my garage on display to the public. So all of that gets hidden. So our first variance. Our first variance is because there are lot area minimums. And the lot area minimum is 1,800 square feet, and we're at 1,440. Which is interesting because the same zoning code that says you need 1,800 square feet also allows you to build 20 units to the acre. We're not building 20 units to the acre, but we still can't meet that metric. So there's an internal discrepancy in the code, which happens, where you're given a lot dimension and a density, and you can't possibly meet both because they don't mathematically meet up with each other. So we're underutilizing the density, but we still require a variance on the unit size. By the way, because these are fee ownership, you see all this area that is outside of the units? That is common area through the center, up the sides. So the property is actually much larger, but we've devoted that to common area and green space. These are the second and fourth variances on the staff report, and these are the setbacks that I referred to previously. So the northern units are more traditional. They face a public roadway, Nottingham, so this is their front, but their rear has a setback requirement because it presumably would back up to your neighbor behind you in a traditional neighborhood, and under old-fashioned Euclidean zoning, you don't want the back of your house right on the back of your neighbor's house, so you have a rear setback requirement. This is a different situation because it backs up to the internal road. That triggers a variance. And then more pronounced is on the southern units, because our front, according to the code, is the road frontage, which is actually the back of the project, and the front faces the park. So both of those variances are triggered for the same reason, but one's rear and one is front. The third is landscaping, because you have a front landscape requirement and a rear landscape requirement. Let me try to better illustrate this for you. Is we flip it. So we meet the landscape requirement, it's just on the other side of the building for the reasons I've stated. So there, in fact, is almost double the amount of green space in the project than the code requires, which I'll illustrate in a moment. But because our front is what the code would contemplate as the rear, it is flipped. This is the green space overall in the project, and you'll notice at the bottom that our landscape open space requirement is 15%, and we're almost double that, 26%, because of all that common area around the sides that buffer us from our neighbors on all sides. And the final variance, variance 5, is the side setbacks. And the side setback, and if you can follow my cursor here, this is the easternmost unit in the northern row, If we put the lot line of that 10 feet over here at the edge of the blue, we would meet it. But we created all that in open space, and of course, you know, the policy reason for a side setback is to create separation between you and your neighbor to the side, and we more than exceed it. We're required to have 10 and we have 55. We have 5.5 times the amount, but that 55 feet is owned by the association. Again, if this was a rental project, it would not be an issue because it'd all be under single ownership, but because we made the affirmative decision to make this a fee simple ownership, it put our unit property line here and technically gives us a 10-foot variance problem on all sides of all 4 buildings. But of course, we greatly exceed the 10 feet required. We have 55 feet here, 30 feet, 30 feet, 30 feet, 55, and 30 feet. So we're at least triple the code requirement everywhere. It's just the wall of the units is the end of the condominium unit, for lack of a better term. These are condominium units. Let me give you some examples of where this is done that has been very successful. There are several of these communities in Abacoa. This one is Charleston Court. You can see the platted lot lines on the left and what the property looks like on the right. And you can see these are rear loaded, facing out to a golf course. Ours face out to Phipps Park. Theirs is a golf course. The other side facing out to the remainder of the neighborhood. Everyone gets a front door image. No one sees the garbage. No one sees the cars. No one sees the junky garage. And they're all rear loaded. And those have done really well over the years since Abacoa was developed. Abacoa is one of my clients, and that pod did extremely well. It's part of what creates the character of Abacoa, a neighborhood front stoop, traditional neighborhood. This is Magnolia Court, closer to home. You all know this one. This is down across from the Green School on Dixie Highway, just a few miles north of our site. And this too has been very successful. And we dimension this so you can see Magnolia Court, which you're all familiar with, is 150 feet. We're 155. So we're slightly bigger dimension than one that you're already familiar with. You can see the platted alleys run in between. This is right on the edge of El Cid, sort of the northwest corner of El Cid where it spills into Mango Promenade, historic neighborhood. On the right, you can see the imagery of how those rear-loaded garages work, very clean neighborhood. City Place townhomes, even closer to where we are today. So to orient you, this is Fern Street. Just off the screen is the City Place Publix is right here. This is the Publix parking lot. This is Sapodilla. The Metropolitan is here. Dreyfus School of the Arts is here. So all of these townhouses have a front door facing out onto Fern Street. This is dimensioned actually smaller, 145 feet. So we're 10 feet larger than these. If you've watched what the sales prices of these have done, they've done really well. Again, rear-loaded garages. So I think that illustrates why we have the problem and the hardship. It's somewhat the geometry of our property, but more than anything, it's instituting a new urbanist philosophy, which of course is a philosophy adopted by this planning department, certainly in our DMP, bring the human activity to the street edge, but our, maybe antiquated subdivision portion of the code never caught up to it. But we've executed several of these projects in our community beautifully. Magnolia Court and City Place townhouses are 2 examples of those. We meet all of the requirements for the granting of a variance. Happy to go through these with you if you like on all 5 variances, but in the interest of time, I just put green check marks there, but I'm happy to come back to them. Staff agrees with us that we meet all portions of the comp plan and consistent with the purpose and intent of the LDRs, and they're recommending approval. We enjoy staff recommendation of approval. And with that, I will stop. Delighted to answer any questions you have. This is a rendering of the actual project if you want to know what the look and feel of the architecture is. And again, we have ownership here and we have the planning team. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present. Be delighted to try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll start off with Board Member Picott with any questions of the applicant.
No questions.
Okay, Board Member Burgess?
Yeah, just one. So, part of what we're looking at is public welfare impact on adjacent properties and the sensitivities for the adjacent parcel owners. And the city-owned parcel of the park has a couple city-owned assets, large canopy trees that are within close proximity to the southern property line. So I was wondering if, because the zoning code, I'm not sure, addresses the nature of buried critical root zones adjacent to development sites like this. And those existing trees, if you could go to the site plan, I see the aerial, with the shadow, the impact looks even more dramatically on the site. But it looks like your site plan has the drip line of the proposed tree canopy there. So looks at the very bottom of the page, those large circles, right? That's the estimated canopy. So I can also assume that's the estimated root zone
I'll let
under,
Brian answer.
depending on the species. So I guess the question is, are there any considerations for the impact between the civil infrastructure you're putting in, the construction activities and root pruning required, and can we get some guarantees that the city's owned assets won't be negatively impacted in any way by those activities?
Absolutely. Brian Chekas, for the record. I plan and design 823 North Olive Avenue. I've been sworn in. Board Member Burgess, yes, we have always intended that the existing large trees on the city side would remain in place. One of the strategies we were going to do, there's an existing wall for a portion of our project, the east portion. When we continue that wall, we're going to post and panel it so that we're not digging footings and cutting through any root systems on any of those larger trees. So that'll minimize that. And I believe with our setback, these circles are relatively accurate. We're going to make sure arborists are involved with any prune back on our side, because we want those trees. Those are just a natural asset already plugged in, ready to go. So we'll make sure we preserve them, and the city's landscape architect, Tiffany Kapner, is going to hold our feet to the fire. But if you want to add a condition to us, we're fine with that, because that's our intention anyway.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question, because the staff is asking us to consider conditions, including the approval of an informal site plan review. So if that was expanded to just work with staff to accommodate their requirements for proper arborist techniques related to the root pruning there.
Absolutely. We wouldn't have done it any other way, but if that has to be added, we're okay with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No further questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Board Member Fields?
No additional question. It was just answered.
Okay. Alternate Hack? Okay. Board Member Savage?
Yeah, I have two questions. My first question is, I didn't see from the rendering, is it a single car garage or is it a two-car garage?
The width of the garage, it's 2 cars. Is it more than 2 cars plus storage? Okay. 2 cars with storage on each side.
And then I also saw, like, in the upper right corner, is that like guest parking? Or has any parking been
Yes. In
thought
fact,
of?
I'm going to have Brian tell you where every one of the mechanicals is located and all of the guest parking.
Okay.
Board Member Savage, we have proposed to have a combination of on-site parking. There's parking located on both sides of the project. If you can see my cursor on the screen, at the west side and at the east side, there's 8 in total. We have handicap parking centrally located, 2 here and 2 standard spaces here. That would be for guests, or if someone wanted a quick in and out, they can pop into a space without having to get into a garage, for example. But we're also utilizing on-street parking, so we're going to improve the street, have landscape islands, and have on-street parking so guests can also come to the project and not have to actually come into the project. They can just park. Actually, anyone can park because it's going to be public, but because it's in front of our project, guests can certainly utilize it.
Okay. And then my second question was, when you showed the green space, you showed like the entire area, in front, I guess like on the back recess that borders the park as being green space. Is that not going to be a paved walkway? Has that been?
You mean this graphic?
Yeah. Is that paved, or is that actually going to be green space?
That sidewalk is going to be a paved sidewalk for people to get access to the units. We're showing it as green space because what we envision is what we've seen a lot of these developments, that pathway being just surrounded by green, and it's going to wind its way through. It may not be straight like that. We might put some variation to it, and it'll be more of a real amenity. Yeah, that's paved area.
But it might be permeable pavers.
We could make it permeable pavers, yeah. But now what we are showing from the sidewalk in the back, at the south side along here, what we're showing is more of a concrete planks. So we do have grass integrated or stone integrated, so that it's gonna be a little more designer and permeable than it would be just a straight concrete path.
Okay, and then my other question, you said that, are you putting up a wall between, was that what I don't know if I
So-
misheard?
Yeah, so there's an existing wall that runs on the park property where my cursor is here, all the way to here. And we're gonna continue that wall on our property with direct access through. So this central walkway here and all the feeder walks go to a hole in the wall with a gate that will allow people to come right into the park and permeable access through the park. It'll be secure for the residents, obviously. But, yeah, that was the point of having that direct access. Staff asked for it, and we agreed 100%. That's the reason to have these front yards looking over looking over the fence into the park.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay. I think some of the variance requests are, specifically due to the presence of this internal road that's, if you go back there, that's, going through the middle of the property. And then you also pointed out the guest parking that's access from that. How do guests access the roadway or gain entry to the roadway then?
I'm going to let ownership or Brian answer. A call box.
Okay, so a call box is being provided and
Yeah,
that
obviously the owners would have clickers,
will-
call box code.
Okay, and then you mentioned trash, that it's located in the two
Yes.
dumpster locations that are shown. So then, and then how is access granted for the waste removal then?
Are you going to use a private hauler or public, or you don't know? A Knox box or some other
Okay,
typical method.
so instead of individual roll-off trash receptacles being on Nottingham, it'll be in those dumpster locations?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions for the applicant, so with that, we can move on to staff's presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Ann Volsey, planner. I'll be doing the presentation for staff. Mr. Hoyer did a great job presenting the request, so I'll just go and highlight some of the variances so you can get a better visual as to what they are. So variance number 1 impacts all of the lots 1 through 30, and they're highlighted in yellow. Variance number 2 and 3 impact lots 15 to 30, and that's for the front setback variance and essentially the front yard landscape. And in red is that area that is not being provided as landscape, but rather as the structure. And the applicant has stated that they have ample landscaping, and I provided the landscape plan right here. So you can see the landscaping that's on site. Variance number 4 is for the rear setback variance impacting lots 1 through 14. And the red shows that area that would need the variance. And lastly, variance number 5, which is for the terminal lots 1, 7, 8, 14, 15, 22, 23, and 30. And highlighted in yellow are the lots themselves, and in red are the portions that are not being provided as part of the lot, the individual fee simple lots, but as part of the property. Okay. And staff recommends approval based on the findings that it meets the standards found in section 94-38D6 of the ZLDRs, with conditions that the variance shall only apply to the lot specified in the staff report, and that the applicant shall obtain approval of the informal site plan review, as well as the major subdivision of the subject parcels.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I will now move to board questions of staff. I'll start off with Board Member Burgess. Any questions of staff?
No questions for staff, thanks.
Okay. Board Member Fields?
No questions for staff.
Okay. Alternate Heck? Okay. Board Member Savage?
No questions.
And Board Member Picat?
No questions.
Okay. I did have a couple of questions, and it might be easiest to show, maybe go back a couple of slides to show where the setbacks were. I was a little, I guess, surprised maybe in the measurement that, so if you go to the one that showed either the front or the rear setbacks. Yeah, that's fine. So if I understand correctly from the presentation, and this is maybe kind of just a quirkiness in our code, for the row of units that's at the north end of the property, the front setback is basically where the front door is on Nottingham, and the rear is where the garage doors are. And yet you have a mirror image of this directly south of that, and the front is the garage doors, but the rear is the front doors.
Correct, and that is because the newly proposed right-of-way becomes where we measure from.
Okay. And is it, and just to, maybe for my edification, is it because we take the road with the highest hierarchy? Because the units on the north row of units basically have two rights of way, a private right of way and a public right of way. So we're measuring the front from the public right of way. The units in the south only have one right of way, so it makes sense, I guess, that the front would be measured from the only available right of way, and that one's private, so that's why it has to be done. Okay. Yeah, that's just, again, an interesting kind of nuance in the code because, again, one row, the front door is the front, and the other row, the front door is the back, is the rear setback. So, secondly, and I think that sort of plays into the fact that they're here for these requests because even though these are basically mirror images of each other, the setbacks are being measured differently because of the way that they're oriented on the site. Then if you go to the one that had the side setbacks for the end cap units, if I understood correctly from the presentation and from the staff report, the reason that this is being requested is, does our code require, all the other units are attached, and so none of the internally attached units that don't have an exterior, sidewall, then obviously don't have a setback requirement, but our code then requires an end unit in a townhouse community to either have a property boundary that extends beyond the building envelope.
So the code section we use is the townhome section, and they have a setback requirement for as part of the development standards. It's the side setback is 10 feet, 0 feet for the units that share a common wall.
Okay.
So if that unit doesn't share that common wall, that requirement becomes 10.
Got it. Okay.
So then usually the interpretation is that is the end unit, the terminal units.
Okay. So the terminal units are, in theory, are treated a little differently in the code, that there's, that the code assumes or requests that they have, that they include property beyond the wall, whereas all the other units, the property, at least the side boundaries of the property are the walls themselves. Okay. Yeah, no further questions then at that point. Okay. We'll now move to public hearing. I don't have any cards that have been turned in to me, but if anyone is here in the audience who wishes to speak regarding this matter, please come forward to the podium. Actually, let me open the public hearing officially? Okay, and ask you to do that. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask staff, sorry, you just said that, but if there were any voicemails, emails that need to be read into the public record that were
No,
received?
none were received.
Okay, so then there's nothing else to be entered into the public record. Make one last call. Anybody wishing to speak on this item? If not, the public hearing is closed. We'll turn it back over to the applicant if there are any final words or any rebuttal remarks that need to be made.
No, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. But
Okay.
I think it's very clear.
I did want to ask, since we'll be going to executive session, there were two conditions that were included in the staff report, and I don't think we formally asked whether or not the applicant is aware of and agreeing to the conditions that were.
Yes, thank you for asking, Mr. Chair. We are aware of them, and we're in agreement with both of them.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move into executive session, and I'll ask the board members for any input on the item. We'll start off with Board Member Fields.
No additional comments from me on this. Good.
Okay. Alternate Hack? Okay. Board Member Savage?
No further questions.
Board Member Picat?
Just to confirm, Mr. Burgess had talked about an arborist. Is that a condition that we're going to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add some extra language to that condition to clarify the ongoing requirements for proper root pruning and tree trimming on the existing city trees.
We will accept that condition as well.
Okay, great.
No further questions.
Okay, and Board Member Burgess, anything else to add?
I mean, the variance, by the nature of, the new use of the site, is catching up to, what the city's preferred use of the site has been for a long time, both in the comprehensive plan and the zoning plan, and I appreciate the form. I think it helps with the impacts to the immediate neighbors, and it adds to the, housing shortage especially in this missing middle typology where, we're trying to create more, good density projects. So I'd support the application, but I do think the impacts to the existing trees should be noted during construction and even during the ongoing operations. So I'm not sure what we can do with the fee simple ownership and the association once the construction's complete to ensure that they're following best practices. But short of that, I think the condition language that I was thinking is to follow arborist ANSI standards during construction and future operations, and then leave it to city staff to work with the applicant to find the right language there for ongoing requirements. So no other questions other than that.
Okay,
Thanks.
sounds good. Yeah, I'll echo your comments that I think it was helpful to look at Magnolia Court and the City Place townhomes to understand a little bit about what this product will look like. And I've been up to Abacoa a number of times as well too, and seen the product that was shown here on the screen. And yeah, that it is new urbanist. It's it is definitely something that I think the code, our city code, when it was written, didn't fully contemplate. But again, it's been deployed successfully in those instances, and I think follows along the same lines. With that, I'll entertain a motion. I'll suggest that Mr. Burgess make the motion, since you've got that proposed language for the additional condition.
Sure thing. I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant ZBA case number 3445, a request by Brian Chegos on behalf of BRP Nottingham Boulevard, LLC, for variances from Section 94-309G of the city's zoning and land development regulations for the construction of townhomes located within the multifamily medium-density MF20 residential district. This motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the criteria in Article 2, Section 94-38D6 of the City of West Palm Beach's zoning and land development regulations have been met. In addition, the granting of the variance is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. Number one, the variance shall only apply to the lots specified in this staff report. Number 2, the applicant shall obtain approval for the informal site plan review as well as the major subdivision of the subject parcels, including working with the city planner through the informal site plan review process to mitigate all impacts to existing adjacent city-owned trees by following arborist ANSI standards during construction and future operations.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. The motion is made by Board Member Burgess and seconded by Board Member Picott. I'll ask our Board Secretary to please call the roll of the
I would-
voting members. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I would like to hear the second condition once again, just for clarity.
Yep.
I paraphrased from what my notes said, but we're going to, the added part here is the applicant shall obtain approval for the informal site plan review as well as the major subdivision of the subject parcels and work with the city landscape planner through the informal site plan review process to mitigate all impacts to existing adjacent city-owned trees by following arborist ANSI standards during construction and future operations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, we do have a motion and a second, so I'll ask our Board Secretary to please call the roll of the voting members present.
Emmeline Savage,
Yes.
Dana Picott,
Yes.
Jonathan Burgess,
Yes.
Christopher Hagan,
Yes.
Alfred Fields,
Yes.
Sherry Hack.
Yeah, sorry, she's an alternate, so we just have the 5, but we do appreciate you being here today, Ms. Hack. The motion passes 5-0. So congratulations. Okay, with that, that was the only case that was on our agenda today. So there's no unfinished business, no new business, and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, at 2:17 p.m., the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting is closed.